What's up, everybody? David Gordon here, and I'm here with commentator Joe Enders, and we are going to be discussing something a little bit off of the usual for this channel, and it is last night's Tyson Fury Francis Ngannou fight, and we're going to do a little bit of analysis for that because it took the world by surprise and a little bit by storm, if I'm being honest. So first things first, Joe. Give me your thoughts on how the fight played out. Did it go the way you thought it would, or were you surprised, like many of us were?
No, I was absolutely surprised by it. I mean, you have Tyson Fury just, being an unstoppable force in the heavyweight division for basically his entire boxing career. And to see him actually be put down by a former UFC heavyweight champion, who, by the way, has lost several fights in the UFC. He was beaten by Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title before he came back and beat him in their second bout. So I have to say that I'm very shocked that he was able to show up and even land punches on a boxer who's literally, his full training is devoted to bobbing and weaving and dodging punches and being able to keep somebody at bay with the jab. I mean, Tyson Fury is known for his extremely wide wingspan, let's say, and his extreme height. And I just didn't see him exploiting those advantages at all in that fight, and he got rocked a couple times.
Yeah, he took a couple good shots. The left, I think it's the left that put him down. It actually, he got up very quickly. He beat the count by a wide margin, so it wasn't like one of the heaviest knockdowns he's ever taken, not even close to the Wilder ones, or even the Steve Cunningham knockdown that came, I think, from an overhand. This was an overhand left, if memory serves. So he's taken bigger shots than that, but the fact that Ngannou, who, of course, he's a regular in combat sports, but not a regular in boxing. This is his first professional boxing match, was able to connect that solidly to the Temple of Fury that it put him down. I was surprised. Now, that said, I mean, what do you think the reason was for somebody who's an amateur in boxing? And again, there's a lot of crossover between UFC and boxing. So it's not like these guys just don't know how to fight at all. But what do you think the reason was that we saw, Ngannou having as much success as he did to the point where it was a split decision where, the crowds were actually thinking that Ngannou won?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The first thing I want to say is that, and all the people online saying that Ngannou was robbed or anything like that, and it was like, no, he was not robbed. He
That's
was
just a
not
mob.
robbed. And by the way, did I not say in round 7 that this might be a split decision if it goes the distance? I
You
told you
called it.
that. I called that, and it was a split decision. And I said, and I knew that, like, well, Fury will probably get it because he completely outboxed Ngannou the entire fight. But what was shocking to me was how little effect Tyson Fury's punches actually had on Ngannou. There was no bruising, there was no swelling, there was really nothing. You could see it in the post.
He was swollen. He
A little
didn't
bit,
get.
a little
He
bit.
didn't get like rock. I agree. He didn't like get his legs taken away ever. There was never a point where I was like, oh, he's concussed or he's even
I don't think
shaken
I
in
don't
the
think there
fight.
was a point at which he was even hit hard from his perspective as a fighter. I'm not saying no matter what happens, you're getting hit hard. I mean, it doesn't you're 6'9", almost 300-pound person that hurts.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he wasn't getting punched in a way that seemed very shocking to him or that did any legitimate damage to him. He seemed just more gassed and tired by the end of the fight, which was another shock to me, was that he had a 10-round gas tank in him to go that long standing on his feet. But the reason that he did so well against Fury was because he has punching power, and when you have punching power, there's always a puncher's chance. I mean, they've recorded his punching power in the past, and it's said to be the greatest of all time. I don't know if that's true or if that's not true, and we can debate about whether that's true, but that's what the measurements say. And you know what? After this fight, it's certainly become more convincing to me. And to be honest with you, if you're looking at like in comparing Ngannou to other boxers, I mean, Dillian White did far worse against Tyson Fury than Ngannou did, and it kind of shows that UFC fighters aren't really a joke. The heavyweight division in UFC is not a joke. You have some serious strikers that can do some serious damage.
I want to talk about that in a second, actually. But for now, dude, Now, this is where people get carried away, and it was billed to make this fight seem more interesting, which was supposed to be just a giant blowout. And it was really Fury throwing Ngannou a bone because he knows Ngannou's a good dude and wanted to give him this opportunity to get paid like $10 million.
You're saying like why the fight happened?
Yeah, why it happened.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So people build it as like the strongest puncher ever. But there is not a snowflake's chance in hell that Ngannou punches harder than Deontay Wilder. Not a chance in hell.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced of that.
There's
I mean,
no way.
the guy
just sleeps people.
Think about it this way. Wilder is taller and has the same wingspan as Francis Ngannou. They have the exact same wingspan. They're able to swing those punches as hard, as hard with that reach. And you know what? He's going to be a little bit harder for a taller guy to hit Ngannou. Then that's just what I think. If you're a shorter guy and you have that same wingspan, you're going to be harder to hit, and you're going to be able to hit with a similar amount of power.
But Wilder throws his with so much faster. He closes the distance really fast, and it's like a whip. He brings that right back like a whip. And you know how you were commenting during the fight, like, oh, Fury's a lot faster than Ngannou.
Of course.
Wilder is faster than Fury, not in footwork, not in terms of feints, not in head movement, but when you come to like absolute punching speed, Wilder's even faster than Fury.
No, Fury has a faster jab than Deontay Wilder, for example. I think that his jab is much faster than Wilder's. But his power punches, Deontay Wilder's power punches are very fast, but speed isn't all there is to it with a punch. A fast punch is important, but what matters is how much force you're generating with it and how you're using your body to catapult your fist forward to hit that person. If there's more muscle. That's why a jab isn't necessarily as damaging as an uppercut, and an uppercut's
Of course. There's something to that, but then it's more multivariate than that. Which is why like the ballistics on a 357, they do more damage getting shot with a 357 Magnum than with a 44 Magnum because of like the actual ballistics of the bullet, even though a 44 Magnum is a larger grain bullet and is ultimately has more force. I don't know ultimately just about force, but in terms of damage dealt and concussive power, there's a reason. There's a scientific reason why Wilder, when he just touches people, they sleep. And yes, I agree. His jab is slower than
you can say the
Fury's,
exact same thing about
Wilder's
Ngannou.
jab is for something different. He paws at you with his jab so he can bring your guard down. Sure. He kind of has a pawing jab to set up the right, whereas Fury is trying to do more damage and like swell you shut with his jab.
Sure, and here's the thing: neither Ngannou or Wilder could knock out Tyson Fury. He's just. It appears to me that there is not a heavyweight that can legitimately knock out Tyson Fury at this point in time. It could happen in the future. I'm not saying that he won't lose his chin in the future, but he can take some hits. He's shown that he can take some severe hits. But that said, I mean, anything you can say about Deontay Wilder's power, Ngannou has demonstrated in the UFC ring. He's knocked people out with jabs. Ngannou has knocked people out with his jab, just like Foreman used to be able to do. He's a freak of nature, and that's essentially why he did so well against him. He obviously was coming at Tyson Fury with an unorthodox, boxing style, not in the traditional sense, in the literal sense of it being unorthodox, something that he's not familiar with, something that he couldn't really plan for because it was his first time going into the ring. And the plan at the beginning of the fight, I think you can say something about this. The plan at the beginning of the fight was just not the right way to fight the way Ngannou was fighting.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up next. I think there's two reasons why Fury did as poorly as he did. Obviously, he came away with the win, but it wasn't like by the blowout margin that I expected. There's two reasons for it. Number one is just that Ngannou is actually a better boxer than I think most people suspected, and his skills actually translated better from the UFC to boxing than most UFC fighters actually do because he is he's a good striker. Even by UFC standards, and he's a good standing punching striker, not just like a kicking striker. He actually throws pretty good. His punching is pretty good. A lot of people, the grapplers in UFC, it's like they go and they fight one of the Paul brothers and they get knocked out because they don't know how to punch properly.
I think you might agree with me on this, that Francis Ngannou punches harder than most professional boxers in the heavyweight division. I mean, he has to. He's gonna be up there. He's gonna be closer to Wilder than any other boxer.
I think White would hit harder than he does. I think Joshua hits
why didn't
a lot harder than he does.
Is my question.
Well, that I'm going to get to that. So this is the second reason. Number one, Ngannou, he's more competent than we all thought. Number two, Fury had the exact wrong game plan
Yeah.
for fighting him. He's relying on the mauling style that he learned from Kronk. The mauling, throw a simple combination, just a 1-2, and then reach in and grab people, put your weight on them. It doesn't work against a guy that is 270 pounds. Wilder has, he's Deontay Wilder. His legs are a lot stronger than mine, but he's got chicken legs for being a heavyweight. And he's lanky. He's long legged, long arms. His limbs are long. So that mauling style, that not technical style that Fury brought to the Wilder fights, that he's trying to hold on to from the Kronk gym, that played perfectly into Ngannou's style, because Ngannou has a good chin. I mean, look at that jawline. It's like carved out of granite. And then, I mean, that guy can take a punch. So the 1-2s weren't doing as much phasing of him as they were against somebody like Wilder. They wasn't like, causing him to go, get a little loopy, or punch drunk.
That's my point. He was a bull from the beginning to the end of the fight. There was no point at which, in any way, to me, that he looked like that he was even staggered by a punch from Fury. They were just doing nothing. Now, I want to add just a little bit to what you're saying here, because I do agree with pretty much everything that you're saying. That the fighting style was all wrong. Fine, but here's the thing. He could have worn him down by round 10. He wasn't able to do that. And he did switch his style up halfway through the fight, and even then, Ngannou was not as worn out as he was supposed to have been. He was supposed to not even be able to stand up by round 7, and he actually won round 7 in many people's minds. He actually got in some good hits on Fury. There was a couple combinations where he had him on the ropes. I mean, you would have never expected that from a heavyweight champion in a fight. And it goes to what you were saying before, is that he actually has pretty good boxing skills, and once, like I was saying before, you can go watch his UFC fights. He was always a stand-up fighter. He was always the type of guy that people were so scared of, because he would move forward at you and he would hit you so hard one time that you're so disoriented by that punch that you're not even able to figure out what's happening before number 2, which is even harder, hits you. And that's how he would knock people out.
Sure, and his cardio, like you just mentioned, his cardio was much better than I expected from a UFC fighter. And if anyone should be like kind of, a little bit perturbed by this, it's actually Anthony Joshua, because when he's gassed out before, he's like, well, I ain't a 12-round fighter, and he comes in with that after the Usyk fights. Well, it's like, well, I mean, Ngannou's even possibly more densely muscled than you. He's got weight on you, and he was able to compete for at least like 9 rounds, and have pretty decent punch output. And, if he can do that coming from the UFC, there's no excuse for a guy like Joshua to have his poor cardio issues. But, okay, so Fury, I think this time, the mauling technique did not work, because he wasn't able to come in, phase Ngannou by the 1-2 combinations, the simple 1-2 jab, right cross combination that he was throwing that was so effective against Wilder. He wasn't able to phase him, and then Wilder would get phased by those, and then he'd come in and grab him and like kind of grapple him and lean on him and put all the weight on the legs. So Ngannou, when Fury was coming in, because he was coming in with a 1-2 and he wasn't phasing him, then Ngannou, and he's so dang strong. Like, Fury would try and grab him and kind of grapple him and put his weight on him. But Ngannou could kind of break out of that grab and throw those uppercuts.
I know. So, well, that was the Mike Tyson training. That was the Mike Tyson training. Those uppercuts were classic Tyson uppercuts the entire time. I just, he was, when you're really in on the inside and you're just up on the body like that. I mean, the way that he was hitting from the clinch was just, it was incredible to me. And the reason that the clinching didn't work from Fury in this is because he's never actually faced a guy that was that strong before. He just hasn't, especially not in the lower body. You can lean on him, but here's the thing: when that guy's walking at 272 pounds, which is how he came into this fight, guess what? He can tire you out. He can actually, clench with you, put his body weight on you, and tire you out. And I actually saw a little bit of that happening throughout the fight. Ngannou would be like leaning into him and actually making his legs a little harder. And his legs are not trained the same way that Ngannou's are. Ngannou's trained to kick with his legs on top of it. I mean, your legs are just naturally going to be stronger from the sport of UFC than they are going to be from boxing. So the cardio, of a traditional boxing heavyweight fight is going to be vastly different than it is for a UFC heavyweight fight. And you saw that throughout.
Let's face it, every muscle in Ngannou's body is stronger than every muscle in Fury's body.
I don't understand how a 6'5" person, like even at 6'5", a 6'5" person can be ripped at 270 pounds. That doesn't register in my brain.
No, it's bizarre. It's truly bizarre.
And that's really what it is. This is why he was a challenge, because on a natural level, on a genetic level, the man is just a freak of nature.
I would like to see
no one like him.
This is not an accusation. It's not a rash judgment or anything like that. But I would like to see the steroids tests come back, the banned substances testings come back, because I was so surprised at the stamina that he had. And obviously, you can use certain banned substances that will give you stamina. And it's what you said. It is absolutely abnormal for somebody at that size to be able to carry that muscle with that little body fat. This is not an accusation. It's just something that I had in the back of my mind, like, how is this possible? Now, obviously, there's some freaks out there, but even the punch resistance, it was just bizarre.
You know what? All the end result of this fight, I don't think anything different of Tyson Fury. I think he's a great champion. I think he's going to remain a great champion. All this tells me is that Francis Ngannou should probably do some more boxing. And I really would like to see him fight somebody that hits a little bit harder, like Deontay. I want to see if it's even possible to knock that man out. I'd love to see him fight Deontay Wilder. I'd love to see him fight Anthony Joshua. I think that those fights would probably be even more interesting than the Tyson Fury fight. Tyson Fury really is built to beat a guy like Francis Ngannou. He just didn't fight the fight right.
Old Fury. The Fury that fought Deontay Wilder Part 1 before he transitioned to Kronk style, I think basically flawless victories, this version of Ngannou, where it's just jab, move, stick and move, wear somebody out with the jab, and then, if you want to go in for the kill in round 9 when he can hardly see because his eyes are swollen shut. That Fury, stick and move Fury, constant feint Fury, upper body movement all the time Fury, I think absolutely destroys this version of Ngannou. But that Fury is dead. We've seen a lazier Fury, and I lied. I think there's a third variable at work that hurt Fury. I don't think he took this fight seriously. He ballooned up in weight. He had to lose about 100 pounds in training camp of weight that he had ballooned up in before this fight. I don't think he was taking it very seriously. I think he got lazy and complacent because this style that he's adopted, the Kronk, go get him, take it to the house, knock him out quickly style, it's an easier style. It's less draining on you. It takes less energy to do that than to be moving on your feet for that long. And that's ultimately why Muhammad Ali, when he fought George Foreman, he did the rope-a-dope, because George Foreman was so good at closing the distance and walking people down. Muhammad Ali actually said this. He was like, I was not going to be able to remain on my toes and dance away from him for all of the, I think it was slated for 15. I think 15 round title fights back then before they changed it to 12. If memory serves, it could have been 12. But he was like, I just can't dance for that long. So ultimately he had to adopt the rope-a-dope. It's a draining style. I don't think Fury, he's gotten complacent. I don't think his heart's in it anymore. I don't think he's wanting these fights anymore, and he just wants to go get it done and get you out of there in 5.
There's an element of truth to that, but he's also getting older. And when you're getting older, your stamina does begin to suffer. So maybe he may have switched. There could be an instance where he was switching styles simply because he knows that he doesn't have the cardio that he once had. And that could be the case for him. The other thing that could be the case for him, because I gotta say, I'm not sure I fully agree with you on him not taking the fight seriously. He usually does a 6-week camp. For this, he did a 12-week camp. And yes, he was probably losing weight in that time. But when you double the length of your camp, I mean, that has to show at least some shred of dedication. It has to show some shred of, well, I need to make sure that I'm in tip-top shape for this fight. I think that if you're training in the wrong style, if you're training in a style that, is very, very just did not jive well at all with what Francis Ngannou was bringing. I mean, that's really what caused the fight to go the direction that it did more than anything else. I just don't see. I just think he took the fight seriously, because if you look at what you can't look at what I don't, let me put it this way. You can't look at what Ngannou has done to gigantic heavyweight men in the UFC and not be like, I do not want to be hit by that. You can't. You see what he did to Alistair Overeem. You see what he did to Stipe Miocic in their second bout.
Part two, yeah.
Part two. I mean, those men's eyes rolled back into their head. They were gone. That is horrifying.
Dude, the precedent for UFC guys, you have the Jake Paul and his brother Logan, like knocking out UFC guys who were not just bums in the UFC, but like ex-champions. So I think a lot of boxers are like, when these UFC guys come over, it's no big deal. They're not great with their hands. They gas out quickly. So I think the precedent was set, and then Fury might have gotten a false sense of confidence from that.
It could be, but you actually look at the Jake Paul fights and some of the UFC fighters that they brought in. Very few of them were actually like experienced strikers, and when they were, it's because they were old. When they did fight a striker, they were old retired strikers. So I don't think that you can necessarily judge it on that. I mean, you look at Tommy Fury, who is a boxer. He's barely scraping by wins against people like KSI, you know what I mean, and Jake Paul. I mean, they're just not. It's just not the same game. I mean,
sure, but Tommy Fury is not Tyson Fury. I mean, he's like a low level, just getting his sea legs under him in terms of professional boxing and in terms of ability and just raw physical gifts. Let's face it, raw physical talent. He's never going to be Tommy Fury. Just like Joe Montana's son couldn't make it at a D1, the NCAA football school. Just because you're related to somebody great doesn't mean you yourself are going
sure.
The only
NFL
point or NBA.
The only point I'm making is that the only two UFC fighters that were worth their salt in striking, and they were also submission people. They were also this. They weren't specialty strikers. Ngannou is a specialty striker. He's literally his duty in the ring. He submitted one person, I think. His duty in the ring is to walk up to you and punch you as hard as you can and figure out how to do it. That's it. That's all his style has ever been, and that's what's different. Nate Diaz was not that guy. He could knock people out, but he would wear them down before he knocked them out because he's not that big of a guy. You look at Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva was a striker, but he was a striker with his feet. He was a kicker. That's what he did. His kicks were what was the most devastating aspect of his career. So, I mean, the way that we've judged other older UFC fighters getting beaten by the Paul brothers who are, in their 20s, it's just not the same thing. And it's never going to be true.
No,
it's not the same thing. Ngannou going in and fighting. This is a UFC fighter who I did not know was 37 years old, probably tail end of his prime right now. I mean, that's dangerous, especially a guy who's a specialty striker like that.
No, I agree that the calculus was off, but I just maintain that was the calculus. Like, I think he, in and of himself, needed more respect in terms of his actual ability to punch. And based on the past, based on our experience with these transitional crossover fights in the past, Fury was probably just like, meh. He was looking past this fight, dude. There's every reason to believe he was not taking Ngannou seriously. I mean, it's really disrespectful to schedule a title defense for after another fight and like have it lined up and inked, because it means you think there is no chance of your next fight derailing that defense, like making you not be able to fight it. And he had inked this Usyk fight before the Ngannou fight. I think he didn't mean it disrespectfully. He likes Ngannou. They get along well. That's why, again, he gave him a fight. It's just that I think he thought there was a snowflake's chance in hell that anything goes wrong. And because of the past, you look at the past, and UFC fighters transitioning to boxing have not done well. So I just don't think it was on his radar. And it should have been. It should have been. I've seen some articles leading up to this being like, this guy can fight. This Ngannou guy can punch. And particularly this new mauling style might not work terribly well against somebody that's built like a brick shithouse like Ngannou.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and you know what? You can tell how much it actually shocked the the boxing world too, because I think a lot of other boxers were thinking the same thing. You could Usyk actually was at the fight, which was
yeah,
great.
you can see
His
the reaction,
reaction
like,
when he dropped Tyson, when Ngannou dropped Tyson, he was like, "Oh my gosh, the sport!" It was the sport just changed face that he had on him. He was floored. Not in a million years you could tell that Usyk would never have expected something like that to have occurred in the fight. And you know what?
Also, a $50 million punch that could have cost Usyk is like 50 mil or whatever he's going to get from that.
That's also true.
Unification fight.
I still wouldn't want to fight Ngannou without Usyk. So I do have a question for you though. I mean, do you think that Ngannou should, maybe just do boxing? He's definitely got knockout power.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the consensus, and he wants to do it. He wanted to show people he could box with this. I think he's definitely going to get fights now, and he might even be able to jump into the – I don't want to overspeak here and be – sports commentators are such reactionaries, dude. If one guy has one off night, they're like, are we witnessing the decline of blank? It's like, no, he just had a bad night, and styles make fights. Remember, the old adage, styles make fights. So it could have been. Really, I mean, this could be 99% of what we're seeing here, where it's Fury's Kronk mauling style was just it was not very effective in Pokemon terms. Like, it's not very effective against this guy, and he could jump in and try and take on maybe even a future like a top 15 contender and just get absolutely demolished. I do not see him standing there and trading with someone like Wilder or Joshua. I could be wrong, but I think he could take out a lot of, let's say, top 20, maybe top 20, but I could also see him getting like spanked by.
I'm not convinced. And you know what? I'm not convinced because of how he's built. Like you said, he is built like a brick house. I don't think that he can be knocked out by these guys. I just don't. And I know a lot of people's like, well, anybody can be knocked out by the right punch. I get it, but I have never seen that man be even phased by any punch from any man ever. And when I look at that, I see a guy, if he can take a punch, he can box. If you can take a punch, if you can stand up for the rounds, you can you can get in there. You can stick out a fight.
Footwork, hand speed, head movement, feints, putting together punches and combinations. We haven't even talked about the style that he was fighting Fury with. I think these are all things where he's desperately behind the seasoned fighters. And dude, as good of, he got a good chin. No one's denying his chin. I don't think anyone's questioning his chin. But if you get hit by like a 1400 PSI punch on the chin, your neck muscles are among the weaker muscles in the body. You are going to get knocked out. It's just, or if you take a liver shot from like 1400 PSI, you are going down. And these are heavyweights. These are big 250-pound guys throwing with wicked intentions. If he gets hit, dude, in the right spot, there is no man, no matter how like chiseled the jaw is, no matter how strong the legs are, that you're not going down from that.
Look, I'm not saying he won't go down. I'm just saying I don't think he's going to get knocked out. And one of the things that this is why I want to see the next fight has to be Dillian White, Deontay Wilder, or Anthony Joshua. It has to be. That has to be his next fight, because you really do want to see if he can even go up against a power puncher, because he is a power puncher. One, because it's going to make a great fight. First of all, second of all, it really is a battle of power. That's what you really do want to know. That you really do want to know how true, the UFC's measurement of this man's punch was. I mean, it seems like Tyson Fury felt some of the wrath of that alleged gigantic, most powerful punch. And to be honest with you, outside of the legs, Ngannou is built like a boxer. He would make a great boxer. He's got super long arms, and he can throw a punch really hard. I mean, dude, that matters. That means in any fight against any person, he has a puncher's chance.
Sure.
No matter in any fight against any person, when you can punch that hard, it doesn't matter. And that's why I think that he belongs in boxing, to be honest with you, because in the UFC, I mean, the styles just don't fit. He can get submitted by somebody. He can get, he can get out wrestled in a fight and stuff like that. Well, that's not how Ngannou fights. Ngannou fights like a boxer. He should be a boxer.
Yeah, I mean, I was especially impressed by I guess, infighting skills, because he was throwing sneaky uppercuts when Fury was trying to tie him up. And you could see when Fury was going in for the clinch where, like, Ngannou was able to escape it. I think partly because of the UFC skills that he brings over, he was able to avoid being clenched, avoid being tied up, and throw heavy uppercuts in there. I think that's a skill that's going to translate really well, especially if somebody's going to try and do that jab and grab or that 1-2 and grab style that Fury was trying to employ. I think any heavyweight is going to have a hard time wrapping him up, and he actually is going to have a lot better infighting skills than we all thought. He seemed very fluid with the uppercut, which, it's not a punch that is terribly common in the UFC. I'm not a big UFC guy, watcher. I mean, I watch it some, as you know.
In the UFC, you're fighting in the clinch. I mean, you're always fighting in the clinch. You know what I mean? That's the difference. You're throwing knees. You're having knees thrown at you while you're in the clinch. You're having your back, punches into your back while that's happening down there. You're always fighting in the clinch. And you know what?
Well,
I think that
it's
they
more
could
dynamic. You can throw there's fewer like uppercuts like that where you're fighting in a phone booth, and boxers have that, like, they're going at it and they're throwing the uppercuts and they're throwing the sneaky hooks and stuff. There's a lot more that's happening in UFC. So it seems like that's a neglected punch in UFC, and he was really fluid with it. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, sure. Yeah. There's definitely infighting and whatnot.
I'm just saying that and I agree with you, by the way. I think outside of the actual knockdown itself, what was most impressive to me about Ngannou was how well he was keeping himself from getting tired out by Fury leaning on him like that throughout the fight. Because that's a strategy. That's a great strategy for wearing down a big strong man in a fight, is to do that. And the fact that he couldn't even do it, and I think that's a mixture. It's a mixture of what he learned in the UFC clinch that he's obviously familiar with, and just the training from Mike Tyson. I mean, he was throwing uppercuts exactly like Tyson while he was in the clinch, and it was different. It was a different thing that I hadn't seen in a while, and especially from a guy that big on top of it.
I would like to see him against Dillian Whyte or that kind of strata of contender. That would be really telling. Again, I don't think he would win, but there's a 30% chance I'm just like full wrong. I could see him being like a top 20 guy. But when you get into like top 10, top 15, I see that would be a great like story if he could actually hold his own against those guys. Let me pivot. Let me ask you something. What do you think his style was in the fight? What do you think of it? We talked about Fury's performance and why Fury's style was all wrong to bring to this fight, and he should have been stick and move, jab. You could even hear Fury's corner being like, hey, don't go for it all. Don't get greedy. What are you doing? You're like going for it all in these first rounds. You're trying to show off. And they're like, no, just, it needs to be more of a stick and move. So it was the wrong style on Fury. But what did you think of the style that Ngannou was using? How would you rate that? How would you classify it?
I mean, you can tell you could tell that he's not an experienced boxer. I mean, you can tell that, yes, you could tell he wasn't an experienced boxer, but what really impressed me was his punch accuracy. For the first 3 rounds, he had better punch accuracy than Fury did. That's insane. It's insane to me. And those punches are all hard power punches. Quite a few of them were significant strikes. So, I mean, when I move forward into his style and stuff, what I found the most impressive, I think, of his style was, first off, what he was doing in the clinch, and then after that, it's got to be how he was switching in and out of southpaw. I didn't really know that he would be able to do something like that, but the way he would switch stances like that mid-fight, I mean, that's something that most boxers struggle with, especially for his first fight, to be able to be, switching between southpaw. I mean, like that was impressive to me.
I think he watched tape on Fury, and he knows that Fury does that. Fury did that to confuse Dillian Whyte. Fury does that a lot. He'll switch to southpaw to get something going and to kind of probe his opponent's defenses and see where the weaknesses and vulnerabilities are. And so I think and Francis Ngannou is also well known and for his professionalism. So I think he was watching tape. And Tyson also is like a great boxing historian. Mike Tyson, not Tyson Fury. Mike Tyson is a great boxing historian. And when Cus D'Amato was training him, they would watch tape and like go through all of these classic fights all the time. And Cuss told Tyson he needed to avoid Foreman because no kind of in-fighter or mid-range fighter or somebody, you can't walk down Foreman. He's too strong. They watched film together. They
Yeah.
knew all of this stuff. And I think Tyson, because he is such a student of the game, he's such you don't think of Mike Tyson as like an intellectual or like an analyst, but he knows
He knows boxing, man. He knows boxing.
He does, and he knows styles. I think he was seriously going through film with Ngannou and was like, "You're gonna see southpaw, so we got to work on your switching stances." I think that's the explanation for that, dude. What I saw though, it was weird. You would think that a guy like Ngannou is going to be a bully type fighter, just always trying to walk Fury down, and then Fury can stick and move and kind of batter him that way. But Ngannou was also patient. He had poise, and he was chilling in the middle of the ring, and he was trying to counterpunch. That's what I thought was impressive. And we can chalk that up to maybe that was inexperience or some kind of a lack of confidence. But the more I think about it, it seems like that was kind of his strategy, was to counterpunch and throw the overhand right, because he sees that is a weakness of Fury. So the punch that puts Fury down that he has a lot of trouble with is an overhand right, and that's what S.S. Cunningham put him down with earlier on in his career. So I was seeing the counterpunching, that left that dropped Tyson was a counterpunch. So, I mean, I was pretty impressed, and that seems like, at least with this new Tyson Fury, if you have the physical tools for it, that's kind of the game plan.
Well, stylistically, that was a really good adjustment from how he normally fights. He usually doesn't fight people that are smaller than him or that are bigger than him. I don't think that matter of fact, as far as I know, I'm not sure he's ever fought somebody bigger than him. So
there's just not many humans bigger than him.
No, exactly. So unless he was in there fighting like Brock Lesnar or something, I mean, there's not really anybody, and I think he's even bigger than him still. So when you look at how he was doing that was a great strategy to counterpunch with overhand rights, a guy whose head is closer, who you could land on sooner than you would if somebody was. It was a great adjustment to the normal style that you'd see from him in the UFC. And like you said, I mean, he had some great trainers around him. I after seeing this fight, I want to see more coaching of fighters by Mike Tyson. I mean, there's something to his training. I mean, it obviously gave him a cornucopia of tools to use against the heavyweight champion, and they all seem to work.
He came up with the right game plan. I think he came in with the right game plan, dude. Like that much is clear. So yeah, I think that does commend Tyson's coaching strongly. And yeah, I think he has a future for that. Like, get off the weed stuff, Tyson, and start doing
right.
No more hot boxing with Mike Tyson. I'm not really interested in your commentary.
Well, he doesn't like it.
Coaching is good.
He hates being a former boxer. He hates it. He's actually cried about it on his podcast before. How much he misses the ring, misses boxing. He's a former fighter. I don't have the same intensity that I used to. But you know what? That's when you become the teacher. That's the best time to do that. Train up that next generation and be part of that and be remembered as being part of it. I mean, when I look at Mike Tyson's future, this fight sealed the deal for me. Dude, you got to start training the next generation of fighters because he seems to be knowing things that just other coaches are not teaching their guys, because Tyson Fury looked entirely unprepared. I mean, going up against him, and he allegedly is supposed to have the best trainers in the world over at Kronk's gym.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does show, just being the boxing historian, you have a lot of knowledge and the skill set that simply doesn't exist anymore. I mean, they say a lot of the great heavyweight trainers are now gone and dead, and they took their knowledge with them. But Tyson was trained by Cus D'Amato, who has roots, going back to Floyd Patterson. This is a storied trainer who knew the game inside and out and was a great heavyweight trainer. And, I think Tyson has a treasure trove of knowledge, actually, that he could re-import to the boxing game. And we could see a real renaissance in the heavyweight division. People have lamented Supposedly it's been said by Emmanuel Stewart that Lennox Lewis would be the last great heavyweight, precisely because a lot of the talent pool among trainers was going the way of the dodo bird. But I don't think that's necessarily true. We always have this thing where it's like, well, the 1999 Dodge Viper was the last great American car that could ever be made. Like, nah, I don't necessarily agree with that, but there is something to it. I think there's a morsel of truth there, which just like a lot of this knowledge has died out, and but there's a couple guys that are actually like proteges of these great fonts of heavyweight fighting knowledge, and Tyson's one of them. So I think he should absolutely think about coming in and being a trainer. I think you got something there.
Yeah, he's got to. I mean, I want the Mike Tyson gym opened up wherever I don't know where he's located now, probably California, but I don't know where he's located now. But yeah, that's the type of thing that I want to see. I want to see him opening up a training place. I want him training the best prospects in the boxing world. And by the way, he'll get them just because who doesn't want to learn how to box from Mike Tyson? That's it. That's all that needs to be said. You can go to Kronks who are proven professionals, who are some of the best in the game, this, that, and the other, but they're just people. None of them are Mike Tyson. If you're
don't
a boxer,
drive there, by the way. Don't drive there. That was the scariest night of my life.
Forgot about that one. Yeah, do you want to tell that story or?
Is it normal to have a couch in the middle of the road with gentlemen drinking 40s of King Cobra on it at like
in brown paper bags?
The most dangerous neighborhood in the world.
I remember telling you, I was like, yeah, I mean, one of you guys can go check, but I'm not leaving my car. It'll be gone in minutes.
Oh,
that's Detroit. That's Detroit.
Well, so I mean, I to bring it back to being like serious about it, I think Tyson should, be back in that game, and do something for his legacy also, because the way that the end of his career was, I think he has more of a legacy to leave in boxing as opposed to, he went out and his final fights, they were not good, which is true of a lot of people, but he had such a storied beginning to his career that it's a shame that the end of his career was kind of tarnished, and he got knocked out by Lennox Lewis when he was obviously way past Tyson's prime. Tyson never really had a true prime, because you go from early career to like partying Tyson, but he got dispatched by Lennox Lewis, and it was just downhill from there. I think this could be a thing for his legacy, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I've got on this fight. I think the main takeaways are that Tyson Fury, mentally, he's usually like an absolute ring general, and he was not that this time. I think the writing was on the wall from like round 2. You heard me. I was like, in round 2, I was like, he's fighting him completely wrong. You should be sticking and moving and, jabbing and feinting and circling away from the power hand of Ngannou. And it just wasn't that. He was trying to use the tactic he picked up for Wilder against Ngannou, and they're just completely different fighters. And this doesn't bode well, by the way. If Fury is this insistent on this style, which will work well for Usyk, it will not work against Anthony Joshua, because Anthony Joshua is strong like Ngannou and has the wicked uppercuts and technical fighting skills on the inside. So if Fury tries to bring this new Fury style to Joshua, I think he needs to learn from this. I think there's a lot of danger ahead for him if he's too tied to this style. That's what I took from the fight. I don't know. Final words, final thoughts, Joe?
My final words is that I think Tyson Fury is on the decline. I think that there's a new heavyweight, heavyweight trio, whoever it might be on the horizon right now, whether it's going to be Usyk, Joshua, Dillian White, Deontay Wilder, maybe coming back again. He's getting a little up in the years, though. He won't be around too much longer.
I think Jared Anderson's coming up. There's some big talents. Daniel Dubois was supposed to be, but he turned out to not be the thing. Joe Joyce was supposed to be, but he turned out to be. I mean, he just got knocked out by Zhang twice. So things have been shaken up.
But you look at Dillian White too. He was knocked out by the 40-year-old Russian guy. Forget his name.
Povetkin.
Yeah, Povetkin starched him bad. I mean,
but he got his revenge. He came back and won.
He did.
White's on the decline. He's not been. I don't know what's up with him. He's definitely fading fast. He's looked sloppy.
He's not super old, so that's kind of strange to me. It could just be, head injury, man. Getting hit in the head very hard can mess with your coordination and your ability to do athletic things. So, a bad punch can change the way that you fight forever. And it could have happened to Fury too. It might be why he's not fighting the way that he was anymore. It could just be that he employed the wrong style. I mean, only time's going to tell these things.
That's actually true. It could be that we're seeing, he's kind of washed up from the Wilder trilogy. No one can get knocked down, 4 times by Wilder, and I think just come away completely unfazed. I think there might be a certain point where it's like, well, I've got more money than basically anyone on earth. Why am I eating right hands from giant men? He might have just lost a little bit of a step after the Wilder fight. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's going to be taking a long break, and that Usyk's not going to be getting his fight in the future as well. He was saying that at the end. I want to do this. I want to spend time with my family. I think that he's kind of done.
I think it's inked for before March. I don't think the December date will stand up because he's going to need to heal up for a few weeks. And that would give him too short of a camp. But I think we'll see it before March because I think that they have a contract at this point, and it's just a matter of setting the date. But that said, I don't know. I do get a feeling where his heart's not in it. I think you're right there. I don't think he necessarily wants it.
That is what ends dynasties in boxing.
Sure.
Once that attitude set, and in UFC, by the way, I mean, look at McGregor. McGregor stopped wanting it after he started his whiskey company. So he got drunk and fought Khabib, Nurmagomedov, got wrecked, went into boxing, went into boxing to fight Mayweather, and then fought Khabib. And he just kept getting wrecked and wrecked and wrecked and wrecked. He just doesn't care. It's just not important to him anymore, And when it's not important to you anymore, you don't win fights. And that's on the inverse what's so great about Ngannou. That man has heart. That man wants to knock people's lights out, and he punches with intent to do severe bodily harm. Sure. And that's why he hits people so hard. That's why he's going to continue hitting people hard. And I really do look forward to his boxing career. I think that he should be done with MMA for the rest of his life, and he really should just specialize in boxing because there's something there.
Well, I think he made a good enough case for himself to possibly have a rematch with Fury again if Fury wants it. And I think, in a certain sense, should give it because this tarnished his image a bit. He seemed pretty untouchable for the last, even coming away after getting knocked down twice by Wilder in the last fight and put down hard. He had a bit of an air of invincibility about him, and this has really tarnished it. He did not give a good account of himself this outing, and I think it's for the reasons, obviously, that I said. Ngannou was better than everybody thought. Fury fought him all wrong, and Fury was not motivated to do this and was looking past him or looking through him to get to the Usyk fight. But either way, I think a lot of people raised eyebrows, and I think part 2 would be something I would want to see and just see if Fury comes back and vindicates himself, which I think he could. I think, you brought something up where it's like these guys get they get famous, they get to the top, and it's like, why am I doing this? And there's that old quip, I think it was Hagler said, it's hard to get up at 4 a.m. and do road work when you're wearing silk pajamas. When you're the champ, it's like a lot of great boxers come up because they're on the wrong side of the tracks, and it's their way out of destitution. And if you're the champ and you have, $200 million like Fury, it's like, why? But I'd like to see it. I'd like to see part 2.
Yeah, and beyond part 2, I'm even more excited to see Ngannou fight more boxers. He really needs to. He really needs to.
Agree. All right, man. Thanks for coming on. I think that was a solid show, decent commentary, and I think that kind of gives I think that's the analysis on the fight. Yeah. I don't see much that we left behind in terms of just how did this happen? How did this come to be? How was what was it, Fury minus 1,400 to win this fight? How did it come down to the wire, a split decision and overcoming a knockdown? I just don't think, there's much else that can be said. I'm going to tune into some other programs and see what they're saying, but, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, same for me. I wouldn't add anything to that. I think that everything was comprehensive. Ngannou showed up and Tyson Fury didn't.
All right, man. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk soon.